Hey, it's your financial maven, Samantha Besnoff, CPA, and after almost 25 years in the accounting world, I've decided to share my insights and passion about money. Knowing your money and hopefully feeling less stress about your money is what I call being financially empowered. Welcome to the Your Financial Maven podcast.
All right. So good afternoon and welcome to another exciting episode of Your Financial Maven, where we talk about all things money. Today, I am so excited. I have the founder and CEO with me of the Whale Hunters, Barbara Weaver-Smith. Welcome, Barbara. I'm so excited to have you here. Your business helps small and mid-sized companies grow revenue by selling bigger deals to bigger customers. But you're also a co-author and an author. You've co-authored The Whale Hunting, How to Land Big Sales and Transform Your Company. And you've authored The Whale Hunting with Global Accounts, 4 Critical Sales Strategies to Win Global Customers. So welcome. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here with you, Samantha, and with all your listeners and viewers.
Yes, thank you. It's very exciting. And I'm excited because from what I've read and what I've gotten from you is that you've helped hundreds of privately held companies and B2B franchise owners to implement your Whale Hunters process. But before we get into all of that, about your business, how you help other businesses, I want to know, what is money?
Money is the medium for transaction between people. So people who have something to give and other people will want that. Money is the medium of the transaction. It's meaningless by itself.
You know, you're the first one to actually say it in that way, that you're right. By itself, what does it mean? You could have money, but if you're not doing anything with it, it's just kind of there. So that's really interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. So I want to get into your company, the Whale Hunters, and how did you get to being a CEO of your own company and what you did either before that and what you're doing for companies now?
So I started out as a university professor of English.
Oh, wow.
And then I became an academic dean, which was really extending my leadership position more than teaching position. Although through earning my PhD in English really gave me a very good background for sales, because all of rhetoric is really the birth of the sales tradition and the sales understanding, really the written sales directions.
Nice. So I really should have been calling you Dr. Barbara Weaver-Smith. So my apologies.
Right.
No, I think that's awesome.
But that's kind of your ticket to ride to get into academics. So I did that for a few years, several years, I guess. Many years. And then I left the university and I became president of a statewide not-for-profit organization in Indiana called the Indiana Humanities Council, which there's one in every state. And they work on civic engagement and getting people involved in their other institutions, the museums, the art galleries, the schools, as far as civic engagement. So that's where I learned my interest and my capability in big deals, because we did a lot of projects that were community projects that involved a lot of organizations.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And a lot of people who had very different points of view.
Absolutely.
And so facilitating that was a lot of fun. And I also had to do a lot of fundraising in that job. So a big part of that was the sales and big deals job.
You make a good point. People don't realize that you're trying to fundraise for causes and different things. And so you're trying to sell that nonprofit organization to kind of say, hey, be a part of this. And of course, you always get the pitch, well, what is in it for me? But
yeah, exactly.
Out of the kindness of your heart when it comes to nonprofit, civic engagement, things like that. So yeah, very true.
It is a sale. It's a transaction. The people with the money want to accomplish something that they can't accomplish by themselves. So they look for or they discover a nonprofit organization that's doing that. And that's why they invest in it.
So you did that for a while?
I did that for 4 years. And then I got tired of the not-for-profit side of it.
Been there, done that.
Yeah.
Overworked, underpaid. Nothing against nonprofits. It just is what it is.
No, that's just the reality. And I had very good board members. Many of them were business people, but they have a tendency to take off their business hat and put on their nonprofit hat. And so very slow. Anyway, I left that, and that's when I started my own business in 1996.
Oh, wow. So you've coming up on 30 years, a couple of years to go,
We're
right?
Not counting.
I know.
It's a long time, yeah.
Long time,
So
yes.
I started off kind of doing the same work that I did at the Humanities Council, facilitating big deals that organizations wanted to do. But that was still in the not-for-profit world. Then I met up with my first partner, Tom Searcy, who had this idea that the metaphor of whale hunting, how the Inuit people hunted whales, would be a good learning tool, really, for salespeople. He was a sales consultant at the time. So the two of us, we got together, and that's when we formed the Whale Hunters, and we built out the whale hunting model. And I worked with him for a few years, and then I bought him out. So it's been my company since 2008 or 9, one of those. And my husband is my co-owner, and he does some work with me, but he's retired as a university professor and department chair. So he's a researcher, and he does some research work for us.
Good. So what is the whale hunters process then? Like, what did you learn about the Inuits in Alaska and the whale hunters, how they go about doing this?
Our model is scout, hunt, harvest. And so what they did was they learned everything about how whales operate and what it takes to go out after them. They spent all winter preparing for the hunt. So that is the preparation part. And then they actually scouted for the whales to come because they were migrating north. When they come past them in a very short period of time, sometime in April, they don't know exactly when. And then they send out their boat, their umyak, with 8 people on it, the shaman and the harpooner and the oarsman. And then they go out into the Bering Sea and they attempt to bring home a 100,000-pound creature. So it's really extraordinary. And they're ordinary, everyday people that are looking for food for their family and their village. And they only take what they need. And it was very dangerous, very difficult, but they had a plan and a process, and they knew how to get it, and they knew how to bring it back to land. And then they had to harvest it. So for us, that's the delivery of the services. The most interesting thing to us, why the metaphor works, is the end of the day, the Inuit people, they never touched the head of the whale. They harvested the rest of the whale. They left the head. And then the same boat that brought it in took that head back out into the Bering Sea and dropped it because they believed it would be reborn.
Oh, interesting.
For the next season. They thought it was a gift from the gods. They didn't know it was spending the winter in Baja.
Right,
They were like, this was centuries ago.
Right.
They believed that the whale would be reborn. So that's why it's a good metaphor, because if at the end of the story, if the whale is dead, it's not as good a metaphor. The whale is reborn. So that's the attitude that they had about this whale. It was a sacred thing to them. It was a gift. And so if you think of your customers like that, you're going to treat them in a very special way, and they will give you a lifetime of business.
Yeah, it is very interesting. And just from the business owner standpoint of that give and take and doing the research, getting to know your clients, getting to understand that, especially for small business owners, entrepreneurs, gig workers, independent contractors, you still need to get to know your client or who you're servicing.
Absolutely.
I'm doing a little reevaluation of my business services and really wanting to focus more on the small business side of things and consulting and getting business to understand their financial pieces. I deal a lot with tax work, and I get it. Small business owners don't always understand the tax side or the financial side of things, but having, what you talk about, that respect and being at level with your clients. You don't want to talk above them per se, but if you do your research, you bring them experience, that give and take will be there.
That's right. And then you can show up as a peer to them. No matter how highly placed an executive is, you don't have to feel that you're inferior because you are prepared. You know everything you can know about the company, about the individuals that are in it. You learn more as you go along, because if it's a big company, you're going to have 7 to 11 or 12 buyers and influencers that you really need to get to know. First, you need to find them. And then you need to get to know them. And then you get an opportunity to talk about what you do. So it's a long process, and preparation is a huge, huge part of it, the research part.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. And and I think on some level it's okay to be a long process, right? You're trying to build rapport, you're trying to do the
Yeah.
research. So do you work with clients from all over the United States? I know you mentioned you're in Arizona now, but you've been in other parts of the United States or even international, or do you find yourself you're kind of sticking to where you're located?
I don't have very much business in Phoenix. It's all over the country. We've been in Canada, we've been in Mexico, and we have worked with companies in Southeast Asia, although not going there. I have a virtual delivery system so I can work with people anywhere. I've talked a lot, I've talked some to some companies in New Zealand and Australia, but I haven't closed a deal there yet. I'm really looking forward to doing that, and a few in the UK. So that we can go anywhere.
Yeah. So do you find a difference in culture with businesses when you're working with, let's say, businesses in the United States from, let's say, state to state, and then, of course, international? Do you find you have to adjust yourself depending on kind of the culture or the expectations?
Absolutely. Yeah. How they sell, what their clients expect of them. And so we take our model and we help them translate it into a map for their own company, because every company is different in some ways. At their core, they're the same. They're exchanging value.
Yes. At the core, I agree with that. Yes.
So they all do that. If they can't do that, they're not going to grow. And I'm working with successful companies. They're already successful. They've often hit a plateau where they need to go after bigger customers in order to grow. And so going after a big company is qualitatively different than going after smaller companies. So that's what we've come in to teach them all the ins and outs of that. We try to work with the whole company. If the company is too big, we work with the leaders from all parts of it. But they have to all be engaged, because if they're going after big companies, they're competing with other huge companies. They have capture teams. They have sales engineers. They have people who create the bid. They have people that write the proposals. And smaller companies don't have any of that. So how do you compete with that? Not by being exactly like them, but by delivering everything that a big company expects. So there's a big piece of our training is, if you're smaller, how do you frighten them? How do you scare them? And we call them fear busters. What are all the tangible things you can develop to use in the sales process that will mitigate or eliminate their fears? So if you're small, you're relatively unknown. You might be unknown to them. They're very afraid of making a mistake. They're afraid to take them more work. They have to teach you about how they operate. They don't typically express those fears. So you have to bring them up and say, we know you would be right to be concerned about X, Y, Z, and here's how we handle that. And the smaller companies have to become much more process oriented in their own practice. And they learn that from working with their clients, especially what we call the onboarding plan. A lot of smaller companies really fail when they actually bring that whale on board. Their company, their team is not prepared to serve at that level. Sometimes maybe they don't even really want this big account. They don't understand it. They haven't been part of the process of landing it here in their laps. And sometimes it feels like just more work. So we engage the whole team, and the leaders engage their people. So everybody understands we hunt whales because we eat.
Right. But the fact that you don't just do it from the beginning, that I'm sure you get clients that come to you and say, oh my goodness, we're growing and we've gotten this great opportunity, but we don't know how or what to do with it. And I'm sure there's frustration with businesses trying to figure all that out, because I do feel that small business owners are the backbone of the business world in this country and really all over. The blood, sweat, and tears, and they want to scale, they want to grow. But in order to do that, they need the resources. And it sounds like your company does that. And I love that.
We do, exactly. And we work with companies of all sizes, but most of the ones that we get in and do our whole process, they've already achieved 25 million.
Wow, that's awesome.
And so they need to make a big leap. I think our biggest privately held company that we worked with was a $750 million
Wow. That's awesome.
company.
Yeah.
So they're on a big leap.
Yeah.
A very big leap. So they're already successful. Now, I work with lots of smaller companies too. I'm just giving some examples of people who have benefited from the whole system. And if I could say, the alternative we have now for smaller companies is our Whale Hunters Institute. This is our online platform where all of our materials are online. People can access it for $29 a month per person. So it's very accessible. And it also includes a clone of me,
Okay.
which is Barbara AI.
Oh, that's cool.
And this clone has learned all of my material. It knows all my books. It knows all the materials that I've used with clients.
And we'll put the link to that in the podcast bio. We'll get all that information at the end. But I think that's great. It sounds like you're not just going after the larger companies to go after the larger companies, but you're trying to help smaller businesses to kind of grow as well. So are there any tips or insights or tricks as you've been talking with these small business owners that you can share with small business owners to give them the confidence that, yeah, you might be small, but you may have something that can provide larger companies or others with bigger, better deals?
Absolutely. Smaller companies are typically faster. They're more agile. They're more flexible. Big companies have trouble getting certain things done because they tend to be bureaucracies. And so things move more slowly. It's hard for them. So say you're an advertising agency or a marketing agency, which I've worked with a lot of agencies. And the big companies have an agency of record, usually a big agency that's already embedded in there, or they change them every few years, they publicize. But they use smaller companies for all sorts of things that their big agency can't do as fast. So, for example, they have need for something using AI if they need new technologies. They often need to go to smaller companies for that. But they're not going to buy your advantages unless you alleviate their fears. So you can't go in and just tout your new big thing. It has to be couched in terms of business outcomes for them. And you have to convince them not to be afraid of you because they're afraid they might be too much for you. You couldn't handle them. They're afraid that they could overwhelm you, put you out of business financially because they might not pay for 90 days. You know, small companies tend to pay right away. Big companies, they'll hold on as long as they can. So you have to be prepared financially to do 90 days of work maybe before you get paid. And typically you have to do it on their paper. That is, it's their contract. It's not your contract that you're familiar with. So you need to, if you have legal advice, get help in how to manage the negotiation of a big contract and what you might have to agree to in order to work with big companies.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting, taking the fear. But I think, like you mentioned, it's the research, it's understanding and the techniques.
Totally.
And I think it sounds like even with going after the bigger companies, I think for small business owners, a lot of these techniques can probably be used for some of their own small business to small business connections and scaling because, again, fear is a big thing when it comes to smaller businesses. So how can you utilize that and be prepared?
You know that you're afraid, but you don't probably know that they're afraid.
True.
So learning what they're afraid of is really powerful. It's so powerful. It's probably the biggest impact that we have in everything we do is helping people understand the fears and how to overcome the fears.
That's really cool. Is there anything else about what you do or whom you've interacted with that you'd like to share with my listeners that would be good for them to understand whether they're getting into business or they're currently in business and they're thinking about that kind of growing? Is there anything else that you've seen over all of these years that really can help the business owners or even just individuals thinking about it, getting involved and getting started?
I would say to them, think about all the things you do and what you can put into a formal process that has a name that you can trademark. Like usually I work a lot with companies that have to respond to RFPs, which are, specific examples of how they want a proposal to come in. And they ask things like, what is your process for getting new ideas? And you go, I don't have a process for that. Well, for everything you do, somebody in your company is doing it or knows how to do it. And so you put it together into a process with steps. It gives you something to sell that's familiar to a big company.
Right. It's a business plan to a degree, right? It's
Yes.
laying out kind of your process. And you're right. As a CPA, I have my own small accounting business. I mean, I have a process with my individual tax clients and my small business clients who I do tax and accounting work for, but I don't have anything written down. It's all kind of up here. And I know I work for myself. I don't have anybody else, but it's not a bad idea, I think, to lay out kind of what do you do when you take on that client? How do you onboard them? How do you have those communications? And it's really intriguing to think that can be scaled as you're growing to then work with larger companies.
Sure. And thinking of you as a CPA, if you built out your process, you could sell your process. And the outcomes of your process, that's what you're selling. What is the outcome and how does it work?
Hey, it's time for a money break. Welcome back from our money break. It's interesting, you talk about the whole AI and virtual. I mean, I've been almost 90% virtual long before COVID, but I use a portal now. And I've had that for a few years with my clients. I do a lot with virtual. And the steps in the last 3 years, I've learned kind of what works, the steps of how to get my clients to sign on to the portal, get me the information I need, have the communication. And I have clients who just, I don't want to go through that. I said, well, it's secure. Your identifying documents are very secure. And also, I want to have those conversations in writing. So we have to work through that, right?
Sure,
we have to,
yeah.
right? It's CYA on both ends. You have to CYA
on both ends. Absolutely. No question about that.
Yeah. And every year I say, I should be writing it down. What worked? What didn't work? And then how can I scale it to work for me going forward?
Yeah, I think that's my best advice for small businesses. The sooner that you begin to think of what you do in terms of processes and then build out the process. What I have to sell, what makes it distinct and unique is the process. Then here's where it came from, and this is why it works. And if you do XYZ, it always works. Because landing big sales, as you said, it can take a long time. And if people don't have a process, they're likely to give up, or they're rushing to buyers. They have quotas that they have to meet every quarter, and all that stuff doesn't work for large account sales. You have to just get over that for the large account sale operation, or you need a different sales process for that. So the sooner you start thinking like that, think in terms of process, because my process is scout, hunt, harvest. That's what I sell, scout, hunt, harvest. And it revolves. So part of the harvest is new business with that account. So it's a complete cycle.
It is interesting for small businesses or medium-sized business. It's the process. In my view, I feel like there's 2 or 3 different kinds of legs with a business. You have the financial side of it, which even if you don't have an accounting degree, you really have to have an understanding of your finances. You have the process. How are you going to do things? And then you have kind of the whether it's a widget or a physical product or the service, you have the actual thing you're selling or giving or providing. And I think business owners at any level really have to understand how that all works. And it's hard. You're tired at the end of the day when you're working and you don't want to deal with, let's say, reviewing the finances of things, but you need to understand the tax implications. Do I need to make estimated taxes? How does that work? And also fits into the process. You might do certain things within your process to help benefit you. Like in the part of the process of working, when do you get paid? How do you get paid? What do you need to do to get that?
So true.
Yeah. It's very interesting what I have seen and try to do also with this podcast and in talking to my clients and other people about it's okay to feel frustrated and it's hard to be a small business owner or a business owner, but I'm going back to that, having that process, maybe having it written down somewhere so you see it.
Absolutely. And you can share it with your prospects so they know you have a process, and that makes them confident about you. It sets you apart from anybody else who does what you do. There are a lot of people that do large account sales, training, consulting, whatever. But I'm the only whale hunter.
Okay.
I'm the only one that has
I love that.
Scout Harvest as that methodology. And very few sales training companies ever work with a cross-functional team. So that's another distinction. So thinking about what makes you distinct is also part of what is important for small companies.
Yeah. Oh, I have in just chatting with you, because like I said, I'm doing a little realignment with my small business side of my business. And, I have already some ideas of how I want to service my small business clients when it comes to all the financial things, but I'm going to try and get that process nailed down so that they understand why I'm coming to them and saying, listen, you might not want to do the accounting work, the actual day-to-day transactional work, but you still need to understand how it all flows.
Absolutely. If it's part of a process, then it can't be picked apart. And you have to do it from the beginning to the end. And you have to get paid from the beginning to the end.
Yes. It's interesting. I've been in my business about 10 and a half years. And it took me some time on when do I charge my client? Do I charge them when I file the return? Do I charge them when I'm prepping the return? I've gotten burned a few times where I've worked on that return and then I didn't get paid, didn't file the return. And yet I spent a couple of hours, 2 to 5 hours working on that stuff. And so I've adjusted kind of how I get paid because I'm providing them with the service, whether or not I'm talking to them directly.
Exactly. Yeah. That's how you have to think about it. And that's how you have to charge for it. Sure.
Because it's your time, it's your energy, and you might not be talking to that client directly while you're doing this work, but you're still doing that work and you should get paid for it. I mean, large companies do it.
Totally.
They get paid for what they're doing, and larger companies do subscriptions or monthly billing or whatever. And you don't necessarily balk at paying them. So it's trying to get small business owners to kind of feel the same, that have value when you're charging them for your process, and don't say you're sorry about it and not to be ashamed to ask for it.
Exactly. I totally agree.
Yeah. And I'm sure you hit that when you start to talk to a business that wants to scale up and work with larger clients. How do you get them to be comfortable with that?
It's all about how you position what you have to sell. Also, when you have a process and you're selling the process, they don't know what it's supposed to cost.
True.
And so you can price it higher.
It's interesting. I get people who do like a prospective client meeting with me virtually. And one of the things I do as I'm asking them questions is I let them know what my rate is. And a lot of them just, why do you charge so much? And I go through and I say, well, this is why I do it. This is what I do for you. And this is why I do that. And I also have the CPA certification behind my name for a reason, personal reason. But there is a reason why you hire a tax professional to do the tax work. And you're going to have to pay for it. And I get it. Things are hard right now for a lot of people. People are frustrated with how much things cost. I respect that and I understand that. But, I always go, well, I just want to get my taxes done cheaply.
And they should go to H&R Block and not you.
Go somewhere else. And I understand that and I respect that. But you're paying, like you said, that service, that process. And it's important for people to understand why.
When you go to one of the factory producers, you do not get any advice about how to handle your money better. You don't get any advice about what you could have done or should do next year. You simply get a tax return. You don't learn anything. You don't get any advice.
Although I will say, and I love my clients, I am constantly doing newsletters throughout the year. I have these tax tips come through and they don't necessarily look at them or read them. And then it becomes tax time and I'm still trying to explain. And then they get upset when they owe or the refund's less. But I still put that process out there because I can still say to them, listen, this has been talked about. I'm trying to help you. I tried to shift a little bit to a more subscription base this year with my current clients to explain that. And they just weren't. And I understand that and I respect it. They just didn't see the value in it. And so that's why I'm kind of rethinking, how do I provide that value?
Yeah, you have to find a way to express value that's meaningful to them. When you express that value, they have to have it. They feel like they have to have it. It's like, when somebody goes in to buy a car and they have budget for the car and then they see their dream car
right.
And they have to have it and they're going to make it fit in their budget. So you have to be their dream accountant or whatever you do, their dream something.
Right. Something. So when you're working with these businesses, do you still work with them after they've gotten that, whale or gotten the larger business to kind of follow through? Do you find that there's still that connection to help them continue that process?
Well, ideally, that's how it works. Not everyone wants to pay for that part of the service. And that's another reason why we have the Institute. Because if they do the training and then they have the Institute, they have long-term reinforcement and they can ask questions and they can find courses and things to help them as they go along and also to train their new people as they get people.
Right.
Yeah.
And that kind of wraparound service of being able
Right.
to do that.
Mhm.
So I want to shift a little bit, talking about businesses, what your company has done, but you are a woman-owned business now. And I want to know, just in general, do you have any insights for women, whether it's for personal finance or business finance, anything that you yourself kind of wish you had known as a woman, either, like I said, from a personal finance aspect or from a business aspect? Any kind of tips or insights you'd like to share?
Well, I wish I had known more about the financial side when I started. I mean, I had to learn a lot about that. I had to learn a lot about business. But I think when I talk with women and meet with women, they often talk about not having enough confidence. And I was blessed with confidence. I
That's
don't know where
awesome.
it came from my mom and dad, I'm sure. But anyway, I work a lot with women on believing in yourself and believing that you belong where you are, and especially that business of show up as a peer, whoever it is that you want to sell. Don't be intimidated. Don't be afraid. Do your homework and show up as a peer. So you don't have the same position as them. You don't have the same authority as them. What is it that you do have? I mean, I have a PhD, which is kind of meaningless in business, but people respect it because they know it takes a long time and it's hard to get. So that makes me feel, okay, I can talk to anybody.
So did you take any classes for the financial side of it, the accounting side of it, or did you, like you said, talk to peers and just learn along the way?
I engaged a really good, expensive accounting firm early on, and I have an accountant that I use and I pay whatever they charge because that it's really important to me to have really good bookkeeping, and I don't have someone else doing it. So I need that. And I need that tax advice and that tax planning and that quarterly payment. All that kind of stuff is important. I didn't know anything about that. I started my company and I put some money in it and I thought, well, how do I get it out? I mean, that's where I started at that level, really. I've always engaged good advisors, lawyer, accountant, people that I've needed to help me grow this business along the way.
And it's okay. Yes, they're going to cost you some money, but it's okay to take that advice and have that advice on board because I think it'll help your business as well. And also maybe on a personal level too, helping you understand your finances on a personal level too, if you have that.
It also has helped me with pricing because I think this is what my attorney charges. This is what my accountant
Right.
charges. I have to charge more than that
Right.
in order to afford them.
Right.
So it's very helpful in pricing. Most small business owners underprice.
I agree.
Partly
I did it.
because they don't create the value proposition. When you really create the value proposition to your customer, what you're selling is not necessarily what they want. They want an outcome of some kind. They don't really care about doing the taxes. They want the outcome of having the taxes done. They're not interested so much in how that happens.
So I also try to reach out to a lot of our young adults. I've got college-age sons and a lot of their friends. And just what I see, my older son has been trying to get a job and it's been frustrating for him, trying to market himself, get out there. And he's trying, but it's just, he understands finances and money because, hello, accountant, I tried to instill that in both my kids.
Right.
But any advice, you can give to our young adults when it comes to understanding that piece of the world, again, personal business, when it comes to finances, kind of getting out there and understanding money.
Well, I think it's a very important thing for them. As far as the job hunting goes, I always treat that as a sale. It's very much like a sale, selling yourself. You have to be somewhat assertive in that process. And it doesn't hurt to find companies that you'd really like to work for and talk to them. In addition to the ones that happen to invite you for interviews, whatever, you can do that. You can be more assertive. And don't worry if you can't meet, especially for women, don't worry if you see a job description and you can't meet every single criteria. If you are really strong in some of those qualities, then go ahead and apply. At least the process is good for you, even if you don't get the job. But often you do. You have other really strong qualities. As far as finances, I think the biggest thing is to not incur too much debt. It's really easy. It's so easy to incur college debt. And I really hold the colleges and universities responsible for that. They allow people to borrow way too much money in comparison to the degree they're getting. They may get a degree that doesn't lead to a job. You have a degree in political science. So what? What are you going to do with that? You have a degree in economics. You're not going to be an economic theorist anytime soon. So, it's really helpful to have a degree that the name of it is marketable. All my degrees are in English. And so I've had to make that marketable. I thought I would be a teacher, and then I thought I would be a professor, which I was. But
now you run your own company.
I'm a business person. Yeah. So, and my degree background has been enormously helpful to me because I learned to analyze and synthesize as well as have a good control of language. And I learned a lot of novels, which really hasn't been so helpful, but it's part of the process. But anyway, if you incur more debt than you can eventually manage, that's a big downfall.
It is. And it's not just college loan debt. You have a lot of kids who aren't even in college. It's credit card debt. It's living beyond your means and learning how not.
Yeah, whatever you can do to keep your expenses manageable, that's the most important thing, I believe.
I agree.
And then you'll get there. But if you overspend and get caught in a cycle of debt, it's very hard to get out of.
It can be. It truly can be. So is there anything else you'd like to share about your company, about what you do for small business owners? You'll send me some links that you want me to add to the podcast bio. We'll get those links for you guys to definitely check out what Barbara's company has to offer. But is there anything else you want to share about your company, the Whale Hunters, that you think is interesting for my listeners?
Well, I just like to reiterate that we built this Whale Hunters Institute, especially for small business people, to make it affordable for them to get access to all of the whale hunting materials. You can get in there and there's a list of courses you can take and be certified as a whale hunter, or you can talk to Barbara AI anytime you want to.
I love that. I think that's so cool. And you make a valid point. A lot of things are going AI. So how do you utilize that within your own business?
What I'm doing with AI is monetizing my intellectual property. That's what I'm intending to do. Make it available to people on a scale that I can't do myself. So that's business growth strategy for sure.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, this has been so delightful and learning about your company and what you do for businesses and how, even a small business owner can take your process or your thought process and create their own value with it. This has been great. Thank you so much, Barbara, for joining me today.
Well, you're welcome. And thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Hey, it's Your Financial Maven, and I want to hear from you. Feel free to leave me your insights and money stories or questions that you may have about money. You can visit www.yourfinancialmavenpodcast.com and click on the I Want to Hear From You tab. I can't wait to hear what you have to say about money. The purpose of this podcast is to provide general information on the subjects discussed. It is for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only. You should consult your CPA, accountant, or tax professional for all of your specific financial needs or situations. Your Financial Maven is hosted and produced by Samantha M. Besnoff, CPA, and Your Financial Maven, LLC. Editing is done by Kris Zarnoch of KMZen Creative. Music is written, composed, and performed by Daniel Shore.